Like I'll be working on a kick drum and I can get kicks to hit pretty hard. Like that's kind of one of the things I know how to do pretty fast and pretty well. When it hits the MP3 and that little subtle distortion happening, like that's the kick I'm used to. That's what I'm hearing on a Travis Scott record. That's what I'm hearing on these records that like, I'm not hearing that in Pro Tools and I don't want to put a clipper on my kick drum to get it, right? So I'm finding that love later in the MP3. And whether that's accurate or not is...
I don't even know who you are right now.
But this is... We've never talked about this?
No.
It's I feel like I've like texted you about this.
So we worked on the website today.
Yeah.
And it was one of our first, one of the first design collaborations we've done together. It was cool, splitting the effort, copywriting to design and page layout. But I feel like we could talk a little bit about kind of some decisions there, and whoever's listening can understand the site a little bit more holistically.
Yeah, I mean, understanding ourselves as individuals and groups kind of is the start of the project, right? It's like sort of understanding your business or understanding your sort of role in the world. I mean, we all sort of have a vague idea of who we are and what we do and what we're good at or whatever. And the people around us have versions of that too. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you're thinking about how few words can be used to get a point across, you know, and to distill that language down and down and down and down.
I love how many renditions we did of a certain, 7-word or less sentences and just trying to hybridize different versions that were coming through your mind, Spider.
Yeah.
And,
And I was loving the instincts in the moment because now we're not doing a whole lot of thinking about it. And we've done that for years. And so when we get on the call to do the thing, it's like, yeah. Everybody's got stuff and you're all sort of prepared for that moment. And that's what struck me today is like, oh, dude, we're fucking on this right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a ton of time. It wasn't like backbreaking work. It was just sort of, all right.
Got homework to do. I haven't had homework in a while. This base camp setup that we got going on the Michaels. It's like, there's chores to be done.
Yeah, today we were taking photos. I got to check that off on our list on the website. Yeah. It's good. I mean, I think it speaks to a lot of things, copywriting being one of them. So really interesting.
A lot of people may not know what copy is. It's kind of a
sort of the classical term to describe words. But like when you're talking about design, and the words that fill that design, it's often referred to as copy. 50s era, 60s era design, art and copy were sort of the two departments that came together and made advertisements or whatever. The copy writing aspect has been really interesting to me, and you and I have been doing a lot of that. And really, I mean, there's so much to be said about it, but without getting too technical, I think what's really interesting on a more universal level is finding the right words to say the thing you're trying to say, and then before you even say the thing you're trying to say, figuring out what that thing is. What are you really, if you had one sentence, most of the time we do, to say something to someone, what would it be? What would you choose? And I think it forces convergence and it forces decisions to be made, but also there's so much flexibility within that. And so we were looking at the headline of our website, and what is it going to say? The first thing someone sees when they go to our website.
What's going to be engaging and truthful representation.
Yeah, and I think there's sentences that tell you the facts of the situation, and there's sentences that tell you how it feels.
Yes.
And you're looking for a good balance there or not. You know? But it's definitely a different thing.
Yeah, it's a cool mode to see everyone in today. Whether or not you're like, oh, we're in this mode, or you just feel like contributing, or either way, but it's a mode of thinking. It's like you're moving words around. Let's say we have 7 words to 10 words in a sentence. You're taking a word out, you're putting a new one in, you're swapping them, reversing them. And it sounds like English class, and it kind of is, but to do what Rory just said is difficult. And to remain authentic to who we are, what we're trying to build, and truthful is It's quite a task.
It's difficult to do at a high level. Also enjoyable to sort of watch everybody's instincts at play in the moment. You know, like and the mutual respect going around, like how all the opinions are like the instincts are all considered, and it was definitely a sort of milestone in our collaboration for me.
I think so.
To
Yeah.
sort of see it just
The dance.
happening in like a time constraint, and like it was good.
It feels like everything else that we all do, and then another version of it.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to operate at the highest level that we possibly can in our disciplines, and to see us come together on something that we're not primed to do. All of us, Michael aside, this is what you do, and that's how you direct us, as if that's what you do, right? So that's very helpful.
Yes.
Though in the last 5 minutes you had to go take a call, there was 2 decisions that were made, and it felt confident making those decisions enough that you'll be like, because I even said it, I'm like, oh, Michael will fuck with that, or he can change that and fit that
He has
into
the keys to the castle anyway.
Right,
so
right.
you're still there
Yeah.
in the last 5 minutes, though you weren't there. It's still conceived.
Yeah.
I fixed the typo actually.
Nice.
I think the obvious or not so obvious trap when we're writing copy, and you see this in every bio anyone's ever written for themselves, is to make it sound professional. So you use big words and you try and sound official.
Yeah.
And you lose the feeling. And I think the parallel to making records is so obvious.
Yep.
You know, you want to make it sound posh, and you want the top end to be shiny and the bottom end to be full and the snares to smack, and like nobody's keeping an eye on how it feels.
Right.
So you're like worrying about sounding pro and multi-band compressing and doing the things that make things sound pro in air quotes, and you miss the fact that it actually the demos felt better.
Right.
So sometimes it's that scratch idea on the notepad that feels right, and then when you get all of the facts and the points and the data into a sentence, it's like, this is truer, but doesn't feel truer.
This is a very interesting phenomenon.
Most true, least
and
emotional.
And even today, we were debating the sentence that felt engaging and you could sort of roll through it as a reader, versus the statement that was more complete and true and more correct in its description, more complete, and more correct.
You guys weren't
very interesting.
You guys weren't fucking with the 3 7-syllable words in a row. That wasn't your.
I mean, that's the thing. It starts. We had a nice
was
alliteration.
alliteration.
Yeah,
we
there
had
was.
a nice alliteration going. It was.
No, it felt too reedy.
Weirdly,
I know. I
It's
love the
just a
distilling
bit
process of that.
heady.
It also speaks to the sacrifice of good ideas in the creative process.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that's something, the kill your darlings quote.
Yes.
I forgot who said it.
I never
It's one of the
thought-
poets.
I
Is
never
that
heard
it?
that one. I thought it was "Kill Your Babies."
Kill your babies is what I always
Yeah.
No.
Let's find
Your
out.
song
We're gonna
children.
find out right now.
Pretty sure.
Your synth children.
we
You can't
got
have 11
Pretty
kids.
sure it was
the darker
Darlings.
version. Kill your
Yeah.
babies. Mutilate your children.
You're an
It's like-
engineer. You can't
Wanna-
afford 11 babies. You can only have 6.
What's the verdict?
William Faulkner.
I'm
Yep.
struggling with
Darlings.
I've got another one coming. It's
This
like, fuck.
literary advice refers to the dangers of an author using personal favorite elements. While these may hold special meaning for the author, they can cause readers to roll their eyes for such reasons as purple prose, narm, egregious use of a word or phrase. Did he seriously just use the word egregious? Up there, dude, kill your darlings.
Yeah. I forget that I studied English for a little bit and I geek out on this stuff, but that was definitely a quote that stuck with me.
Yeah, it's Faulkner.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you're in the room, you're in the studio, you're recording. I'm recording a record right now. There's parts that I'm like, oh, this is dope, or this song, it's really cool, and I love it, I'm emotionally invested in it, and then I put it next to all the other ones, and I'm like, well, it doesn't really fit. And it's like, I can view this as now I'm losing this precious thing that I'm emotionally connected to, or does it fit the whole thing? And same with words in a sentence. Like you start with a sentence, maybe you use the word, what did it say, egregious?
Egregious.
So we use that, and everyone saw it, and they're like, oh, we need that. We could change everything else, but we're all fixated on that. And then we're like, oh, actually, let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Keep the rest of it. We did that a few times today, and it's helpful. So I think that's some pretty universal advice. And I think sharing about the website and how we're thinking about it is useful for people that go to it and are just like, oh, click, 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 download thing. But there's definitely more thought in it. And You know?
We hope, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun to do. Really.
It is, yeah.
I
Very
mean, the
fun.
self-discovery to me is so rewarding. The refinement of our sort of understanding of who we are, what we have to offer, leads to the ability to leverage it for good. You know?
When we
It's
lived
exciting.
in Ireland, Sydney, my wife was a copywriter for about 3 or 4 years. She wrote, ghost wrote books and did copy for hotels and businesses and different stuff. And it was really fun working with her on it. Just reading stuff aloud and back and forth in the living room. Just kind of read that again. And, clients became lifelong friends. Like we're texting today with a friend that was a client of hers in Miami that she got on some website, not like whatever the equivalent of Fiverr was back in the day. She was like, I'm a copywriter open for business in Ireland. And this client in Miami found her. And all these years later, we're like still in touch and she's a close friend. But just the act of reading stuff aloud and pitching it back and forth and that trust of like, no one's trying to hurt you. No one's trying to attack you. We're about the work. We're about the outcome and we're about how it flows. That sort of, I was trying to think, what is the parallel in music for reading? Because there's copy that you think is great until you say it, and it's a mouthful of fucking consonants,
right.
Yeah.
And it's like ideas in the studio that you think are, this is really intense the way I'm doing this filter sweep on this thing. And it's like, and then you hear it.
How does it play out? Yeah.
How does it fucking work?
Well,
in
that's
real
why
life?
in the best writing sessions, I mean, someone's got a dope verse. You're like, get on the mic. Can we hear this sung? Awesome. You have a whole concept worked out from start to finish, but there's very few people that can converge on it from start to finish sounding great right away. I mean, it's just few and far between. So
yes.
you gotta say it out loud.
It's something I do with the Hit Lab all the time when I'm working with them on copy. It's like, read it back, play it back. Like, and we have someone read it on the call. There's usually like 4 of us on the call. So a different person each time will read the copy again. And so we could all hear it coming from someone else and be like, oh no, that doesn't sound right. Even though we all thought it was the greatest stuff that we just wrote and it took us 20 extra minutes to edit, as soon as someone reads it, you're like, oh, that word, no. Immediately, you know.
One of the techniques that I use is I take the copy out of whatever software I'm in. I could be in Sketch or I could be in Illustrator, I could be in Grammarly, I could be in whatever, Pages or who knows. Just take it out and put it in another format and you see it like kind of arranged differently and then up. I think part of the good news that I'd never really considered is like this reading out loud is the only way of reading that I can do. And I wonder if it doesn't help me keep the objectivity because I'm always saying the words in my head. Like being dyslexic, I don't have this way of reading that's like absorbing data from a page that other people describe, the way they sort of scan and take in. I don't even know what that's like. So I'm always sounding everything out in sequence in my head like I'm talking.
It has to go
I'm just
out
silently
right.
talking,
Okay.
I have to kind of externalize it for it to exist in my mind.
Isn't that how everybody reads? No?
I mean,
I'm on your team then. I can't scan a page and get it. No, I have to
Yeah,
hear
I
it
mean,
in my
I'm
head.
a scanner.
yeah, the way people...
I'm on Spider's team. Yeah.
I mean, I do scan for relevant information.
yeah.
But when I find the relevant information, it's like a very consonant by consonant sounding out of every word in my mind in real time. It's not truncated like, I don't know.
On that note, just reading out loud, I mean, just visually and taking it to another platform, I always, before I send a mix out, I listen to the MP3 in QuickTime, and I just can't, like, the Pro Tools being the last visual and audio thing that I hear and see, like, it can't be. Because you're going to listen to the bounce in QuickTime or somewhere else, so however you guys like to listen to your records, and you're going to hear something different as a true listener.
Yeah.
There's no visual component there. And I always hear something different. I'm like, is it where it's still sending, or do I have to open up Pro Tools again and do this quick note, or just add that to the note that, add a note to the notes that someone else sends and do it later. Like then there's a value judgment of when to do that. But I always hear something different in that platform. And you're going to see that in text edit. You're going to see it differently. It's a really good point.
Well, the value of context switching. We're always talking about the overhead of context switching in our work, like zooming in and out and all this sort of thing. This is a different kind of visual context switching to expose audio. You're trying to undo the priming, right? Because you've seen the arrangement on the page and it keeps coming by and you're expecting that dynamic event to happen.
Exactly.
You can see it coming. what's the music like when you can't see the clue of what's coming next, you know?
That's the first listen.
Super
That's
valuable.
kind of the goal. Ingmar and I
right.
talked about this a lot when I was writing my first extended conversations. And it was how to hear the song as a first time listen every time. And like, how do you get to that at some point? And I always think about it because I don't, and this is something that's, I think, anti most mix engineers that I hear. I very rarely listen down from start to finish to the song. It's when I get to the end of the song while mixing it that I can judge that the song's almost done. Like it's a full, concise idea from my perspective. Like obviously someone else thought it was a full idea, but I rarely get to the end of the song. And I always start from the top. I'm always trying to hear it for the first time and then making a judgment call in the middle, but always hearing it from the beginning. And it's just a thing that I adapted because I love starting from the top. I can hear you when we were producing a record go, let's hear from the top. It's like you're making a call on the second chorus, but you got to hear from the top. Context is so important. So just thinking about that as a whole, I'm always looking for that first listen feel. Like when I get a great master back from, it's usually Dale at this point, but any mastering engineer, if it's great, it's the first time hearing the song again. I put that rough, or I put the rough aside when I'm listening to it. And I put my mix aside when I'm listening to the master. It's a first listen. It's the first time you're seeing a photograph. It's the first time you're hearing a new concept. It's I have to find that excitement, and it's kind of part of our job. So.
In the Trello, we've got a topic: audio memory. How does it work? But that idea of what's the hangover going into the second chorus if you haven't? You can't just start on the second chorus and have a decision about what it is. It's got to be in the context of whatever the flow of the song is, you know?
Yeah.
Makes me wonder what the benefits are of hearing something 1,000 times, you know, hearing it so many times, like what the benefits are versus the trade-offs. You know, you can become very intimately related to something.
Yep.
At the same time, what are the risks of losing objectivity?
It depends on your perspective, I think.
And your role in the project and all this sort of thing. But I mean,
it's an endurance game. It's partly that. It's partly being able to learn and practice how to maintain objectivity while listening
as a
1,000
machine
times.
That can't be objective. That's the thing. Like because you're talking about ways of hacking, which is, you know,
I think
we were hacking
the way
everything,
you do it, right? Yeah.
You know?
We've all been in the room with the person who seems to sort of sleep for most of the session, kind of tuning in and out. They're like coming and going and weird. We're like, why did he leave the room? Why is he back? And then they just drop these notes that are like, yes, that's it. That's like 100% what it needs.
Sure.
They have this, even though they're hearing it as often as you did, they're tuning in and out, or they're absorbing it, or they're maintaining objectivity in a way that you couldn't because you're deep in some fucking plug-in automation parameter bullshit.
Right.
You know, so
those are my biggest wow moments from watching Tony and being in the room, were things that he remembered that needed to be assessed after we diverged for an hour on an idea or 10 minutes on an idea. He'd be like, oh yeah, we got to do that thing again. We got to remember to do this. And he'd remember it. And I'd be so zoomed in. That's his job, is to maintain that perspective so he can have a youngling like me, you know, dive in for 10 minutes on some technical kind of thing. And he's maintaining objectivity. And that's, you know, that sets the team in motion and different and value and judgments placed in different members of the team, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It is hard to do it all by yourself, but I think you can. I think we're constantly hacking those systems, and that's how people get better. I mean, that's practice.
Yeah. It's just as a pattern recognition machine, it's like, I'd love to know, you know, sort of true facts about pattern recognition in the brain and how how you can really do it, you know, like maybe there's actually something to know there about objectivity. And, you know, as a mastering engineer, you know, you don't have that many opportunities to play it down, right? But as a mix engineer, you'll have more. And as a producer, an artist, you have so many.
Yes.
You know, what are we, you know, we've all heard records that sound belabored. They sound kind of perfected, and
it feels that way. It doesn't even just sound that way.
Yeah.
It feels all tidy.
It's interesting.
It's
you just made a point of, like, you know, this perspective changing, this up, you know, zooming in, zooming out thing that sort of, that's the way to do it. And that's our goal. And sort of as though like we can take that for granted, but there's a lot of information in the world that says the more you fuss, the more you control, that the better it is. So like, and there are people who will be hearing this going, wait, that's not their their sort of footing normally. It's kind of like how much can I how much can I nuance the details? And
Yeah,
if I
at
just
this point, I want a mixer to spend as little time as possible with my music.
Right.
Yes.
I want them to touch it and feel it, and then that's
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
It takes me back to a thought of a collaborator that I was working with for a few years, amazing guitar player, and he would play down a sick part. He was like, from start to finish, he'd play it down, and then I'd be like, cool, what's next? He'd be like, wait, no, grid that, like edit it. I was like, what do you mean edit it? That shit's tight.
What do you mean grid?
What do you mean grid that? And to a degree, I understand what he's talking about, and did a quick pass. He's like, no, tighter. I was like, wait, you're taking all the life out of what you just did. And though I think that there's an application for this if you're not as good of a guitar player, but you're great. Like, can we have you in this record? It's not my record. It's so-and-so's record. I'm like, yeah, but what does that even mean? Like, that would be the argument. I'm like, wait, but you're also performing on this record as if you're the band member.
How does making it worse make it better?
but what's better? What's better and worse? I mean, more lifelike, less lifelike could both be better. It was objectively a great performance. So why not allow it to exist like that, and then build around it and see if it doesn't find its way at, it's just a different perspective on that kind of micro editing version of pop music that I think lived a long life of maybe a decade or so. It's loosening up on a lot of things that I've been mixing recently. I can tell, like, it's looser and things are off the grid. It's like, fuck, thank God, man.
The benefits of quarantine, I think.
Yeah.
Just a little bit off the grid.
Can't be bothered. 2020, a little off the grid.
It's interesting because it's now flipped. The role has flipped, and now when I see visually, when I'm in Pro Tools or here, when something's super gridded, now that seems out of character.
Yeah.
Where now the trend is to be, it seems that way, at least what's coming across my plate. Sigh of relief here.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah, it's good news. I'm curious though, because now I'm hearing myself talk this way, and I was talking at dinner about listening to David Blaine on Rogan today, and his enthusiasm, his childlike enthusiasm, and I love that little bit about myself. I love that I'm really enthusiastic about things, and I mean, for better or for worse, just is what it is. But real life talk, I just went away for the weekend. Trying to do that once a month with my girlfriend, Niku. We're going away here and there, and I come back with real fresh perspective and mixing faster. Like you're saying, mixers should spend less time on a thing. I want you to feel it. I want you to perform it and get out. And I'm noticing this, and I was also on the phone with the Hit Lab today. I was on the phone with Nathan, and Hallie was on there, and just what a great time. Also, just side note, just chatting. It was like, oh man, it's so great. There's always
they're building something there, and he's always thinking.
Yeah, it's always a nugget.
Yeah, I get paid to hear him. It's great. It works great.
But we were talking about this, and just the health factor of the perspective break, and what happened on that vacation, and conversations that you have with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, and like that's all fueling the fire of what's going on in your life. But coming back to work felt so exciting, and I had this enthusiasm for the moves that I was making, and not that I don't have that on day 7 or day 6 or your end of the week, but a little bit less. I mean, I'm pretty grateful and thankful for getting to the opportunity to make music for a living. I feel pretty lucky to do that. At the same time, I've realized the health benefit of coming away and going back, and I didn't know that for the first decade and a half of my career, and coming into year 16 or 17, whatever it is, it's a necessity. And I didn't, and I'm speaking from the perspective of I didn't know how important it was, and now I can't go back the other way. If someone needed me to mix on day 7, depending on the gig, I most likely would say no, so I can do that on day 1 and be better at it. I think I would fight against not getting that perspective day.
Yeah.
It seems more important, but the enthusiasm at play is where I'm noticing it. Like the enthusiasm is maintained for every genre, every artist, everything, and it feels visceral. I can taste it.
I feel like enthusiasm, curiosity, and the resulting enthusiasm bypasses so much resistance in the process of getting things done.
Yeah.
And that's what I noticed about Blaine, talking to Joe, them going back and forth, so excited about ideas and new frontiers and everything. It's like, oh, you just sort of get to doing it. You're not stopping along the way so much.
Yep.
You're not caught up in these catch-22s. You're just... It's a sort of productive mindset.
Yeah, it felt like a pretty massive realization for me coming back yesterday. And I came back Monday and then took the rest of the night and then jumped in on Tuesday and mixed 2 records yesterday. And both were met with, this sounds beautiful, this sounds brilliant, all these positive, enthusiastic responses that then gave me a feedback of, oh, okay, cool, this worked. And, granted, there are artists that I've mixed for before, and there's that level of trust as well. There's all these variables, but I'm just met with that, and I want to have that occur as much as possible. I think we all should strive to have that amount of freedom and enthusiasm as often.
Freedom is key.
Yeah. It reminds me of the paper that I was reading in the academic journal on aesthetics, creativity, and the arts. There's a study on inhibition and creativity, and when inhibition is useful for creativity and when it's not, or when lower inhibition is more useful. And it seems as though, to map it to the divergence convergence model, which they do, when you're diverging, the lower inhibition is better. You don't want to be like blocking yourself. And vacation and relaxation provides that lowering of the inhibition. So when you get into a project, especially a new one or a creative one, it's amazing because you can just glide through it. And then what you feel after day 7 is the inhibition kind of levels increasing. You've sort of found all the problems and the things that you're trying to solve, and you know the terrain, and you're like, all right, let's just
you have the words to criticize now.
And now it's like inhibition up, like let me be critical. It's the right time to be. And so I thought that was interesting, this idea of this S curve of inhibition over time in the creative process. But yeah, vacation does that. I mean, coming out here the past 2 years when I was working, I felt like I was the best manager when I came back or when I was away. Like I had all these ideas, typed up like all these different plans and ideas and ways of looking at things just from like not being in the situation, just not being in the room or the office or around the people. That in and of itself lowers the inhibition. You don't feel like you need to put up walls or whatever. And then by practicing that for a week or 2 weeks or a weekend or whatever, you're like in that state of lower inhibition, and it definitely helps.
That's what I call my comedy writer mode.
Nice.
And just try to get loose.
Yeah.
Sometimes you say the wrong thing, but
I mean, that's what we're all here to do on microphone.
Yeah.
We're talking things out.
Yeah.
Might say some ridiculous shit here and there.
Yeah, we're getting I mean, I feel like I'm working up to that level of free flow and comfort, like on the mic with you guys here. It's like I still feel like I'm evaluating the way it's happening. You know what I mean? It's so new and kind of fun and exciting. But the way that we are when we're in the room making records and that sort of anything can come out of your mouth because you're just sort of trying to get out of your own way, and that's a level, to approach these kinds of topics. I mean, I mean, if you think about the kind of stuff we have behind us when it comes to record making, I mean, it's nice to be able to be at a level where you can really sort of fuck off in your mind when you're working to make the thing better. And that's how I feel about this audio engineers performing. Like, this is just a concept that's just sticking with me so hard, is nobody thinks this way.
I love it. I never thought of it until you said it. Yeah.
It's the artist. It's all about the artist. I'm not the performer. It's like, no, but you're living that day.
Well, you're performing your part.
Yeah.
It's a play. I mean, everyone has a role, and maybe you're a supporting role, but you're still a role. You could still be nominated for the best supporting role. Like, I don't know. It's still important,
Yeah.
You see it with people dropping in. You watch different people drop in on recording, and there's some people, and it sounds like an armchair falling down the stairs and go. And the artist is like, and there's other people, it's just this breezy, we're talking, the track is rolling, and the drop in happens, and it's beautifully lyrical and flows, and it's just that it is performative, And I think a lot of people have this idea that the engineer is supposed to be the grown up in the room. Everyone else gets high and you stay straight, and you've got to be the one to organize the backups, and you've got to be the serious one. Yeah. And And, there's a place for obviously professionalism.
That shit needs to be handled.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Someone's
mean the
gotta handle
tone
it.
has to
Yeah.
be
That-
uptight
yeah.
or whatever.
That's that's the foundation. On top of that, there's
Yeah.
like, do I want to be in the room with you when I'm being vulnerable or raw or open
Yeah.
or taking risks? And
But
if
you're also accentuating the performances
Yes.
that are going to tape, right? So you're accentuating those performances and you're relaying them to other people.
Yes.
And so you're this intermediary performance.
Yes.
and sometimes you're the only audience. How you move through the glass when someone is putting down a vocal is the entirety of their audience. You're the proxy for everyone who will hear it.
Yeah.
And the way you move and the way, it all adds up. It all draws out a performance.
Yeah.
If you're, tense in the seat, and it people feel it, and it can be hard if it isn't flowing to sort of give that, to be loose, to be playful.
I think the looser people feel in the chair, the less compression that they would use on their
They would
low
require.
end. Yeah. I'm just like, why is the low end being held up so high for so long, man? Quicken your release times, guys. Sorry. I mean, I feel, you guys know how I feel about that.
Yeah, but it then the focus moves to the frame of mind and the other stuff in life that's happening outside of the room to set the conditions for good performance.
Yep.
This is a reframing. I feel like engineers are often externalizing their role or their position or whatever to these service they're providing or the responsibilities they have. And what we sort of keep circling back to in our conversation is the focus should be more on the audio engineer's instrument in a way, like their body and their mind and how they perceive the music in the moment.
Yes.
It's not so much about the other things, the external things.
Yep.
It's not, and it's not to dismiss them. They all have to be right. But it's like on race day,
It's background
the
stuff.
sprinter isn't on the line right before the Olympic 100-meter sprint thinking about their diet. The diet has to be right for them to get to be in that race at all.
Yeah.
The training has to be right. The sleep, everything has to be right.
Yeah.
But that's not on their mind on race
It's
day.
prerequisite.
It's so we're not being dismissive of things that matter. You've got to have your backup straight, and you've got to have your computer so that it doesn't lock up in the middle of a session, and
Absolutely.
this stuff is all just stuff you got to get right. But it isn't what makes you a good engineer.
Yes.
It's just like
It qualifies you
it qualifies
to be
you
one.
to compete. Yeah. And I think that's something I see missed in the bigger conversation that's out there.
Which part specifically?
The idea that I think a lot of people feel that they can control their way to sort of success, and it's to me it's like you get the fundamentals in place, and then you're open you're open to play, and to happenstance and to inspiration and capturing it. The idea that it's coming from somewhere else and not something that we build by controlling it in the room.
Tips
I like
and
that
tricks
idea.
aren't the end game.
They're
I like-
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this idea where it's like you're building the foundation, kind of translating what you just said, but you're building the foundation so that you can be more open instead of building the foundation to keep building the foundation, aka the tips and tricks mindset is like, all right, I know how to do this thing. Like, what's the next hack that's going to get me to be famous? What does John use on this thing? Or what does this guy use on that? Like, instead of being like, what makes sense for the place that I'm at right now?
I had a really interesting
People I'm around or whatever.
situation really recently where I have to be super vague about this because either or both people will hear it. But a newish client I'm just getting to learn what they like and how they're mixing and what they're doing. And they were telling me about all the mix techniques that they learned from another A-list person who is a friend of mine. And it was really bad advice, like really bad advice. And it was a lot, 9, 10, 12 things on the mix bus advice. This one that I hear a lot is they're all only doing a little bit, and that's good. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily good. But it was a weird situation to be, the new client was holding up the authority, and it was just like, You know,
Yeah.
that's still in the fussing thing.
Right.
12 windows to try and keep track of what's doing what,
Right.
and away from the song, you know?
Yeah.
We talked about that a few weeks ago.
I love the idea of just getting out of your own way with your tooling, your setup, your lifestyle, etc. I think that's part of, I know that that's part of what we're discussing here all the time, on and off mic. It's thinking about like, what is the simplest thing to do or to use to achieve that grand outcome that you want. You know, it doesn't need to be complex, whatever it is, whether it's software or, software within software, aka plugins, you know what I mean? It doesn't need, like, you don't need to have a lot going on for the effect emotionally to be grand.
Yeah.
I think people forget that.
Yeah. Minimal effective dose.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm uninstalling plugins more than I'm installing them. Kind of just that thought process. I mean, there's still plenty of tools on the rig to be used, but using 5 really most of the time. Maybe a couple of each go to, and it limits the time between thought of what to do and the realization of idea. It's just, that's it. We're just like, oh, we're at that destination. Oh, sometimes I'll reach for a tool and I'll make a move and it will get me partway to the envisioned idea, and then I'll say, oh, actually, no, there's a better tool for this, and then that's where the second one comes to mind. A
shorter route.
Yeah, a shorter route, or a more characteristic route. Maybe there's just something about what I'm doing that's a little bit too subtle, and it's like, oh, this can get me there. Yeah, but you're right. That's a better example, just the shorter route, and then you learn it, and then you bookmark that in your brain, this is a shorter route to this thing, and we do that in life. I mean, we drive on different roads because it gets us somewhere faster than another way, or we want to take the scenic route today because we have more time. It's like we do this in our lives. So we eat such and such food in the morning instead of at night because we know our bodies process it better during the day. And
we try not to overpay for certain things.
Yeah.
And find the best price. I mean, we're finding efficiencies everywhere.
Yeah. I feel like at work, it's where people flip on this different mode where it's so attached to some vague level of what success means that they may or may not have even defined. And to compensate for that lack of definition, people are like adding more shit. They're just adding stuff into the process. That's like the hard work, the struggle. If I struggle enough, I'll be successful, and struggling to be successful is the only way. And like, it's that sort of that grand myth that a lot of people have. I was talking to a buddy the other day about that. It's like, do you need to struggle to be successful, or is that just what the like kind of lexicon in this world is? Lexicon's not the right word. The zeitgeist of America, capitalism, the American dream, like, is that just sort of part of that myth? Like, I have to struggle to achieve this thing. And like, what if you didn't? Would you be good?
I battle
and like,
this all the time.
Yeah. And what if you like just learn the right things around the right people?
Like, I think it has to do with what we value. You know, we value this sort of struggling to overcome adversity thing.
There's a lot of mythology around that.
Yeah, and a lot of respect goes into that.
And people have stories that they tell after the fact about their careers.
Yeah.
They sort of look back and see them one way and tell a story of struggle and a story of late nights, because it's self-aggrandizing.
Right.
I'm kind of struck by the fact that we talked last week about kind of the mixed down industrial complex and the fact that people who are atomized are easier to sell to. And I also feel that people who are struggling are easier to sell to. People who are looking for a great snare sound are much easier to sell. Drum replacement plugins and the latest fucking Cornet compressor plugin. So you don't really, the incentive isn't for the companies to have people who are happy and content and have a complete tool set. The incentive is to drive sort of consuming more. So we don't necessarily...
I think that's the perceived incentive. I think it's possible to have a company who has different incentives.
Oh, I'm generalizing, of course. We have companies that we love that are artisan and that are doing something completely different.
But again, the topic we started with about knowing oneself and knowing how to describe oneself or represent oneself in a sentence, whether you're an individual or a business, it's hard work to get to the core of what your business is and what makes you different.
There's another point I wanted to make about this struggle, because I think on micro level, like on the macro level, it's like the struggle of your career. But then on the micro level, like that translates to like the struggle of the tools you're using or the choices you're making inside the tool. Because like subconsciously, like really subconsciously, like are you putting more stuff in the way because you're like, you got to fuss to like get the vocal right. And then now it's right. And you're like, I just did it. Like I just like overcame this whole thing. You know what I mean?
I want to be a hero type thing.
Right.
This is an opportunity for me to be a
and
hero.
like is only putting one plugin on and knowing how to use that really well and it sounds great, like not enough, you know, in this hero mindset.
I think we
doesn't
talked
fit
about
the story.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I wonder about that from the macro and micro level because for that story to be playing out on a macro level, it has to be playing out on a micro level.
Completely.
But to recognize those moments,
that's all friction.
That's lovely. The way you're saying that.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah.
You know, Spider and I talked about this. I can't remember if it was on one of the earlier podcasts, but just this idea that when you're coming up, you practice on a lot. You learn your chops with a lot of bad players and bad songs in bad rooms, and you develop all sorts of layers of
compensatory
tricks, to compensate for badly hit drums, badly tuned drums
that don't apply to well-tuned drums and
lumpy
good
bass players. and it speaks to the value of getting in the room early with people who are working on good tracks, with people who are doing less, so that you don't sort of internalize those behaviors and make them just standardized. Because I've seen it in live situations, studio situations where, you know, someone is getting ready to go on the mic and you see an engineer dialing in this super complex chain of bullshit. It's like, well, there's two de-essers and a compressor and an EQ and then another compressor. And it's like, wait, you haven't heard anything.
You haven't
like,
heard
what is
anything.
And it's like, no, bro.
Weird anticipation, bro.
I know what's coming. It's like, do you know what's coming? Because I've been had in my ass plenty times recording in the studio with someone opens their mouth, you know, the little nondescript looking person opens their mouth and you're like, holy shit, that is not, or the opposite, the sort of dope looking rock star dude rolls in and it's like, well, that doesn't sound very good, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, there are very, very few techniques that I learned when I was coming up that I actually thought to myself, oh, you do this every time, that I do now. Like there's just nothing that I used to do all the time because I was told. I mean, we're just going back to what Michael was saying earlier. There's so much of a narrative that's been told and taught to us. And very little of it holds court at a fundamental level. Like there's very, very few things that are universally needed to have success in any field. There's besides aspiration, dedication, and a little bit of luck, I guess, or a lot of bit of luck. I mean, I always
preparedness meets opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. But luck. And it's just all. I wonder how to flip the narrative a bit. You know, I challenge us to kind of do that. And you know, Michael just talked about, well, maybe we put on this plugin and this and that. And on today's mix, the only plugins I used were on my template. And there's only about 8 on there. And then I didn't use any plugins except for a filter on a sound. And I didn't think anything weird about it. And then I went back to do a note today, which was a pretty basic harmony down note on the second verse. And I was like, wait, this feels weird. Like it felt weird to me too.
Right.
And I'm good at practicing not overusing tools, but it's like, wait, I didn't use any plugins on these synths. Now, granted, I use some hardware gear that I have in my studio, but that gets me to my, like we talked, that gets me to my desired result and vision a little bit faster. It's just an aesthetic choice that I have, and it's pretty dialed in, and I turn a couple knobs and it feels like something that, you know, gives me a response that I'm looking
Castelli
for.
5000.
That's what it's called. Doug Fern custom made it for me. It's called.
So one of a kind, guys. Sorry.
But I definitely had a little resistance met internally from seeing that. So I can imagine someone that's never heard that feeling that way tenfold, right? So I'm still trying to unlearn that practice, and I'm practicing this on a daily basis. So it's been so ingrained to us to use this, try this, do this, and a kind of larger concept I'd love to explore is the what's the I mean, it's an aversion to change, but also what you know, like what the enhancement of change and a feeling you get from it because it's different. I'm sure there's
novelty
a better...
or
Yeah, novelty.
Yeah.
In my world, that's just, I can make it different, but not better.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. But you might think it's objectively better because it's different and it's louder, right? So like I'm really weary of tools. UAD plugins do this a lot, where it just sounds louder when you put it on. You're like, wait, I want the tool to be instantiated, and then I will now mess with the tool. I will mess with the level of it. Why are you a CLA 76, for example? Like you put that on and it just sounds like a crazy different sound. You're like, oh, it's better because it's denser, it's louder, it's more aggressive. And then you get to the last chorus, you're like, wait, what did I do to the oh, this is still on that. I was fucking around with that, but I must have deemed it better. And that's something that I'm wondering what happens in the brain, kind of that audio memory concept we were talking about earlier.
Well,
and priming.
To that point though, well, there's the visual priming. You're adding something, so you know, again,
you're expecting
consumer culture. You buy a thing and it makes things better. Just the fact that you bought the plugin, you're already assuming that when you turn it on,
you're invested.
It will be better.
See, I don't have that. I buy a new plugin and I use it.
I'm not saying you.
I know, but I'm just pushing back because
very common.
It's so common, but I thankfully don't have that, and I wonder what practice got that, because I'm like, nah, this isn't cool. Like that was a waste of $60, and I never use it again.
Financial headroom.
But it's also conversations like this of proving yourself wrong or having the feedback where people will be like, well, like, you know, it's not better or whatever. You know, getting the feedback is what's going to help.
Sure.
But for on a more universal level, the majority of people, and this is documented in tons of different psychology like studies,
consumer,
none of which I could cite because I don't have them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to pretend. But from what I've read about marketing, selling, all of that psychology, when you purchase something, the higher the price of the good, the more value you assign to it, regardless of if it's better than the thing that's lower priced. And so from that point, you're priming yourself. And then you're also the novelty aspect. So maybe that plugin added some new frequencies or boosted frequencies that you didn't hear before. And those were actually what you need to turn up. But the other shit it turned up is not what you want.
But our job is to recognize all of this.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, for the amateur that is doing this, or even the professional that's doing this,
the evaluation
it's to recognize what part got better and then what also came with that $500 you spent on the plugin that isn't better, but you're just assuming the whole thing is better because you paid for
biased.
it. So it's the cognitive bias that you're really trying to work.
That's part of it. I think I'm talking.
From.
I think I'm speaking a bit more fundamentally than a plugin and what the plugin. Yes, that is a huge part of it. I spent money on this. I want it to work. This is great. But okay, what about the plugin that you already bought? It's 10 years old. It's on the rig. You pull it up and it does the same thing, and you're still unaware of the fact that it just made it louder. Right? I'm talking on a very basic level. It's louder, so it's better. And this happens all the time. I've been in the room. I've seen it. I've done it. I've been guilty of it. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I'm not trying to ride some higher road
it
here.
by accident. Too.
Yes. I'm like, and I think that there's a different, it's like the perspective idea, right? The starting from the top.
Yeah.
If this sound was in the second verse and you instantiated this plugin and you started from the top instead of you kept going and you go again, you're like, oh wait, why is that so loud all of a sudden? It's like it's still fresh enough on the brain. You have enough of a fresh perspective from playing it from the top before you get there. You have enough context. It seems like there's something to bring awareness to in order to challenge practice to occur of the bypass, right? Of using the bypass and really understanding the bypass. It's audio 101 when you have a mentor, right? When you have a mentor that's a great is okay, take it out.
Better or worse.
Put it louder, match gain. Gain match before you even evaluate the move. There's always gain match at play. Like this is it's a bit of practice that I don't think younger engineers and producers understand. It's a bit more important on the engineer in the engineer role and in that finishing touch role of, am I doing too much here? In the production role, it could be
The vibe thing.
It's a vibe thing, and I'm, I want to distinguish the two. Even there, this can be applied for sure.
If people in the room are making choices, the engineer's responsibility is to present them in a way where they can be evaluated. Yes. And that means level matching.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty fundamental, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. I just hear them talking about what plugin is sick. And it's like, that plugin is sick, but what does it sound like it off and then on again? And I want to just take it one step further because it's something I do on a regular basis. I mean, this is my job, is evaluating the like Michael said, maybe this loudness made this sound more exciting in this frequency range, but it's doing a bad thing here. Okay, well, what do? Do I subtract after it, or do I do less with it? Like, and messing with it, and duplicating the track and starting over, and just a different approach, and taking your time with these approaches and not rushing them because all of a sudden you assume it's better. And again, not starting from the top. And it's just, this is a long-winded way of saying listen and bypass. But clearly I'm passionate about
Super crucial point, I think. You hear people say, people hit us up for acoustics advice, and you hear people describe their room, the gear they chose, why they have it, the evaluations they've made. Some of the evaluation that they've made gives you invaluable insight into how to help them, and other times you're thinking, yes, I can see why one might feel that way without the ability to really hear it. And one of the better or worse things, if you evaluate converters for monitoring, you can A, B, C, D, go back and forth, blind tests. You can do all that. The most distorted one might win because it's the most exciting, and that would probably be the worst one to choose.
Yes.
Are we talking about dating?
Yeah.
The most exciting is not always.
Yes, I am.
No, but this is a really good point.
No, this is a really important point.
Yeah.
It's your method of evaluation, because you want your evaluation to be intuitive. You want it to just be instinct in the moment and not be intellectualized. But what if your intuitions don't match?
It speaks to what we talked about.
So then you need to train. And how do you train? You get around people that are good at it.
Well, we already know that intuitions don't match.
But you want them to. That's the performance.
Yeah.
That's the performance. So if your monitoring is fucked up, you don't have a chance of evaluating. Right? Yeah. You don't have a chance of evaluating in a way that's going to shortcut you to the finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to drive that home with Matt Rad on Tuesday, because it was met with resistance of the idea that you should spend money on converters rather than a new toy as a producer. Because he agreed with me plenty on the engineer and this conversation. And then when I brought it into producers also, to be able to evaluate the sound that they were looking for. I mean, my example was my Moog Voyager sounds better and more true and realistic bottom end through my Lynx Aurora than it does through an Apollo. It's a different instrument.
Yeah.
And through the Apollo, you now feel the need to put a Tube Tech plugin, a 60 hertz bump on it, versus no, that sound has that 60 hertz you're looking for, but it's being truncated through distortion in the Apollo on your way in. And that's just, or spend the money on a better DI box or preamp or something that's more at the source than thinking you have to do this later, right? Because that's another step further away from completion when you can just assess the sound and dial it in and get that resonant bump going on the Moog.
And be intuitive in the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that argument still holds strong that, yes, granted, the people that are on a super, super budget, maybe can't afford this at the beginning. I very much said, and you guys push back on this if you will, but I think people existing at a higher level of audio making should take this concept very seriously and be considering upgrading their converters towards low distortion.
Yeah.
Maybe, kid that is attempting to make beats and it's either get the Apollo or not make records, like get the Apollo. Get yourself a twin and start going.
Sure.
But at a certain level, it should be on your list of upgrades and worthy of consideration. It's just something that I find that it's hard to talk about because you come off sounding like a geek if you're talking about converters, and I'm not sitting on gear sluts A-Bing these conversion distortion ratios like Rory is necessarily. But
that's not where you find the good information. I'm doing it in the room.
Yeah, you're doing it in the room for real.
Well, it's an interesting thing because as a mastering engineer, my disposition is all about preservation. Small losses. The thought experiment that I've always used with people when we talk about mastering chains is, you like your mastering chain, you're good with it? Okay. So they've just found an undiscovered Beatles album. They recorded one more album that no one knew about, and the tape can be played once. It is, the most important music recording ever made. The tape has one play, and we're about to capture it. Are we cool to use your rig? Is your rig clean enough to pass that unmolested
forever?
Because we're only going to get one play through your chain, and if it isn't, why not?
Yeah.
Now,
and what would be?
Now, if you want to bring in fuzzy, warm, 2B, colored, crunchy, on a project, and some projects it's appropriate, much rarer than people imagine. But some projects you want to have colors to play with, cool, have them to hand, but by default, if you can't pass that long lost Beatles record without fucking it, you're not done yet. To me, you know what I mean. That's
love this example.
Converters,
blowing my mind. Yes,
converters on both ends, and just an EQ where you can change the frequency, and the Q without introducing a whole bunch of other things. A compressor that can control dynamics without making things smaller or weirder or wider or just different, right? Just like, there's a dynamic problem, let's get that under control. Now, are there compressors that, are fun and pump and groove? And of course, like we have them and it's important, but that can't be your only compressor.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's not very sexy. People have this image of kind of, not in
the current milieu.
No. Yeah. I look at Instagram and I see all of the gear in people's desks, and it's just like a dealer showroom, and it's just like this stuff. It feels to me like you go in a kitchen and they've got like 20 types of just crazy fucking hot peppers, and there's like, well, where's the oil? Where's the butter? Where are the onions?
And where's your oil
staples
from?
Yeah. Like, where are the basics that we cook with?
Are your basics local and fresh?
Wait, you don't have a knife? You're cutting the fucking meat with a spoon? But you've got all these crazy fucking chilies, like these heavy flavors, and the basics aren't attended to. It's like your power isn't right, or your monitoring isn't right, So
fantastic.
It's
You're killing the metaphor game today.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, really. I don't know. I mean, it's just as a disposition in mastering, it's much clearer. And I think in recording, people feel like, there's much more of a kind of a let's fuck it up kind of thing as an answer to it's not happening. And it's like, well, maybe maybe you need an espresso. Maybe it's like, this sound is boring and flat, so let's crank it through some distortion, some culture vulture or whatever is
always the go-to, more distortion.
Yeah. People seem to think that these knobs say emotion on them, and they just turn them up, right? As if more means more emotion.
Yeah.
They're very
it can. It can.
But it can just as easily.
It's just not a one size fits all argument. Yeah, exactly.
So I think there's a case to be made for as kind of a more of a preservationist. You want to nurture moments, whether it's a Moog noodle or a vocalist or an upright bass player in a room. You want to nurture performances and then try and get out of the way. And like we've talked about before, often, like we're taking photos right before this thing. We're not trying to document the reality of who we are. We're trying to capture something. Yeah. We're trying to capture a sense of who we are. Right? It's not. A stereo pair of DPA Omnis through the cleanest pre you can find. Like, if that was the answer, we'd record everything that way. It's not always about documenting, it's about transferring emotion, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes the truest capture is through an 1176 or a tube pre or with a janky old ribbon mic, you know what I mean? But just that intention to sort of nurture and capture, rather, like we talked about with Sam a couple of weeks ago, I think that's been lost in the. It's always sort of like, let's kick it down the road and we'll deal with it later, you know.
Yeah, right.
And that's an old trope, like, you know, the fix it in the shrink wrap type thing.
Fix it in the mix.
Yeah, fix it in the mix, you know.
Fix it in the shrink wrap.
Yeah, that was like, you know, fix it in the mix, fix it in the mastering, and then it's like,
And
oh,
then
it became
shipped.
Yeah.
Is that like making a schnitzel? Like you're pounding
Yeah,
it out?
that's what I was thinking.
How do we...
No,
Not like
it
when
was
you,
just the
when
idea.
you shrink wrap a CD.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
The idea was that
That's
old-
too
it's
late,
old guy
guys.
shit.
That's too late.
It's old guy
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
exactly.
I
You're
was trying to think
you're
about it.
deferring the decision
I
making.
hope I never hear that again.
We're in our 40s, bro. We know about CDs.
Oh, right. I forgot. Yeah.
We were there.
Fix it on Winamp.
Fix it in Winamp. I love that.
Bring those skins back.
You mentioned QuickTime earlier, and I was thinking about Winamp, and that was like, what an amazing experience with music that was.
Napster era.
Napster era, like Napster to Winamp with the skin of whatever artist I
Whatever.
was listening to.
And the
It was-
visualizer.
or the and the visualizer, and like not even just the artist skins, like other skin. I mean, I don't know.
And the EQ.
Just thinking,
like,
I didn't
the
even
EQ,
think back to that. I had the Marantz hi-fi. It had like the wood on the sides and the graphic EQ. I didn't even. I was 14 doing this shit. I didn't even know. I didn't have Pro Tools.
I had a nice
17.
M&M skin.
Yeah.
There were like E's, like backwards E's as the EQs. It was tight.
I like how QuickTime
And I
looks.
still have that today.
I like how QuickTime
The
doesn't
hardware
distract
version.
from the music.
I'm all right with QuickTime.
Yeah, there's just a play button.
Winamp was fun.
What do you think
though.
about how it sounds?
I think it sounds better than Dropbox and better than iTunes. So on that list, I use it all the time. And I think Tidal sounds better. So when I hear a same wave from Dale and then I hear a Tidal, I think Tidal sounds better. And to me, it's magical because it could be because it's out in the world and I have this excitement for it being out and other people can hear. But to me, it sounds better.
I think there's something going on there.
It isn't. Yeah, it isn't
With core audio.
It's a core audio thing. Yeah, there's a.
Tidal, you can bypass it.
I think QuickTime. The QuickTime listen is really useful as a predictor of the kind of softening that happens on streaming services, Spotify, less so on Apple Music.
Yeah.
But that kind of rounding, slightly blurring at the bottom and the softening at the top. And it's the sample rate conversion that's always rolling, even when you're
Interesting.
it's always rolling in core audio. And that's my understanding is that even when you've selected 44.1 and you play a wave in QuickTime, there's a layer of filtering and sample rate conversion that's happening.
Why?
I mean, the volume control is not like dithered in the way that other volume controls are. I understand. This is not my area.
My experience of it was that stuff would change release by release over the years, like, you know, and it varied a lot, and it wasn't a constant. But definitely in my world, there's QuickTime is soft and round and puffy and a little bit woofy, and then Tidal is very close to Pro Tools, is very close to, you know, Isotope RX, and then Wavelab, which I use and like Nathan uses, is a little leaner and more forward, and it doesn't make any sense why that should be the case, but it just is. And there's a pretty, you know, there's a gulf between the QuickTime play and the Wavelab play, you know what I mean? And they both have things to tell.
Yeah.
But it definitely has a sound.
I guess I'm more interested in how other people are listening to music,
Yes.
right? At that point, after it leaves my Pro Tools rig, I want to know the closest version of what it's going to sound like later.
I think QuickTime is that, honestly.
I tend to like it because as a consumer of music, when I'm listening somewhere else, that's how I'm hearing it. So that's why I was saying earlier today, like on the recording, I always press play on the MP3 before I send out a mix. It's like I'm dragging it into the email while it's attaching. I'm pressing play and I'm either clicking through, you know, to hear if there's clicks and pops, see if I'm like missing any details, but also to hear what it's going to sound like to them, right? Because I don't know, MP3. I like MP3s, so and I know that's blasphemous on an engineer focused podcast here, but. I prefer them. Like I'll be working on a kick drum and I can get kicks to hit pretty hard. Like that's kind of one of the things I know how to do pretty fast and pretty well. When it hits the MP3 and that little subtle distortion happening, like that's the kick I'm used to. That's what I'm hearing on a Travis Scott record. That's what I'm hearing on these records. That like I'm not hearing that in Pro Tools, and I don't want to put a clipper on my kick drum to get it, right? So I'm finding that love later in the MP3. And whether that's accurate or not is...
I don't even know who you are right now.
But this is... We've never talked about this?
No, it's
I feel like I've like texted you about this.
it seems like
It sounds harder to me. It's distorting.
yeah.
And that's what people are used to hearing, that distortion. I don't want it to be super hi-fi. I don't want a trap record to be hi-fi. It's just not going to work. It's not going to translate.
Wow, it's really interesting. I didn't know you believed this.
What do you mean believe it? It's it's an audible occurrence. I mean, I hear it.
That you like it, that it's useful in your life.
Believing and liking.
Yeah.
Well,
Wait, this is really good. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know.
Give it to me.
No, I'm just, it's interesting.
And we've now entered the second phase of the conversation where Rory and John debate
this is
deep audio concept
what did I call
passionately.
Agreeing, where we agree about everything and still argue the whole time.
Yes.
I see these are all perspective shifts that are useful. You know what I mean? I think they're all ways of hearing things. I find the QuickTime Listen to be really useful, though it isn't accurate. But it is useful.
Put Spotify in the worst.
Well, what's accurate? No one is ever going to hear the mix come out of Pro Tools or Wavelab like you and I hear it.
No. But
I mean, almost ever.
My folks are getting unfiltered audio to their Sonos rig. I mean, it's more like the Wave than it is like the QuickTime playback.
Mm-hmm. That there is and Tidal users and Qobuz users and
what do you mean unfiltered?
Uncompressed.
Yeah,
uncompressed.
From what
Tidal?
Oh, if they're using Tidal.
Yeah,
Tidal is still like 10% of the users.
If even, yeah.
But Amazon HD is a lot of them, right?
But I would say
I don't know how many are in HD mode. But
we're headed that direction.
It's headed that way, but we're not there right now. I guess is why I like it now. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. No,
I prefer. Let me take a step back. As a music listener, I prefer the Wave. As a professional that is attempting to get their mixes translated quickly and a quick glimpse of what the person on the other end is probably going to hear through their AirPods.
Yeah,
that's my version of that. That's how I get there. I guess.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you send MP3s for approval rather than Waves.
Always.
Yeah.
I like it.
320?
Yeah.
AAC or MP3?
MP3. Always.
What do you make it with?
Pro Tools.
Where were you on
no
the
one's
hold on.
Rory's face.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love it because no one has ever wrote back into the email and said, yo, this MP3 sounds fucked.
No,
it's like, can you turn the vocal up?
Of course they're not thinking about that.
Yeah,
I'm not, and I'm not thinking. I'm not asking these questions on their behalf.
Yes,
you're not wronging them.
Yeah,
I'm interested in the.
I think a master reference is different than a mix reference.
Completely. Again, it's preservationist, and you want. I need people to hear it at the best that it can be. They need to know what the high watermark is.
I refuse to have people listen to a mix in Dropbox for the first time because Dropbox sounds terrible. Mm-hmm. So the only way that, or the fastest way for me to send a wave is through Dropbox right now. That everyone universally understands and can get, and then like some other account that you have to log into and a server and whatever it is. The least complicated way is that, and I hate the way it sounds, right?
Yes,
so I'm going to send it through email or text message. If it's going to go through text message and you send a wave, it's going to be converted to MP4 right away. Mm-hmm. So there's really also a fast bandwidth way. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. The other thing is the fact that it takes 3 months to a year to get paid for these things. So it's hard to want to deliver a wave file when it's so difficult to get paid some of the times too. So I'm resistant to sending final full res mixes because people tend to run away with them. There's that part has been, though that's happening less and less as my career path, the trajectory grows a bit more. Mm-hmm. It still happens. And that was a resistance that is a bit embedded in me and kind of taught to me to some degree as well. Mm-hmm. So that's another layer that is worthy of mentioning.
Mm-hmm. It's really useful,
for this process. And
it's important.
Not to disrespect all the clients that also pay me briskly
in a timely
manner, but there's a lot that don't, and that is a part of it.
That's
assets.
Sort of geeky technical note, but while you were saying that about Dropbox, I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a way you could force the Dropbox link to download.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah. Do you have that?
Yeah, I have that.
Okay, cool.
I do that on it.
Never mind.
Yeah.
And not everyone will get the email on a device where they can do that.
So it's still not universal.
Right. Now the iPads have a file structure, but they didn't until very recently. And it's I've had that with people who only have an iPad, and I am sending waves. I'm not
Right.
emailing MP3s as my default. So
Yes. There is no real easy way otherwise. So anyway, that's probably enough on that.
yeah, no, I'm not interested in the technicalities. I'm interested in the workflow. I'm interested in the whys. It's not, I'm not getting hung up on the codec. It's like, it's the why you, and like holding back an asset and getting paid. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, it gives slightly more leverage to get the agreement across the line. The money's not going to hit the account for a while, but if you can get the agreement started, written up, that's another part. That's a little bit of leverage, and it's tricky, honestly. I mean, we can have managers on this as a guest to discuss this a little further than I'm willing to go, because I don't want to disrupt too much creative freedom here. It's not really I don't think about this very often, but that is definitely a remnant of that happening more and more, is the fear of delivering. And I know a lot of engineers that think this way as well. We've talked about it on conversations nights and have asked me this exact question. So I know it's worthy of mentioning is all.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. Yeah, it's not something that I have to think about much in my world, so it's a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a thing. Let's get out of the weeds.
I don't think we were in the weeds. It's just workflow stuff. It's interesting to me how you the little details that add up to a workday. I think that's really, that stuff all matters.
Yeah,
it all adds up to a flow and a trust and a confidence when you write the email that you know what you're hearing. You've heard what they're going to hear.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
A lot of people send the file without listening to the actual final print.
Oh my God, never.
Yeah, a lot of people do. I know, because I'm the one receiving it, and it's got a giant gap in the middle. There's a second of audio miss. It's like, did you ever listen? Did anyone ever listen to this? No, bro.
Nah, man. QC.
Bounce and go.
I mean, I remember Dale being up like on the Khalid album. He was just up overnight for QC because they wanted a quick new, like they wanted a one song to have a second less gap. That meant to him I have to listen to the whole
Everything
record
again.
down again.
Yeah.
And no one thought about that when they asked for that. But that's another, 2 hours to 4 hours of work like that you're not paying for, right? That's not even part of it. It's not even considered. I mean, granted, I bet, Sterling would probably bill for that. And I'm not sure. Maybe Dale would consider billing for that. But I know at that time he wasn't, right? And that's a whole nother thing. Just like and that happens a lot in my life too. And I wonder what you think on this is, getting can you just do this real quick? And it's like, what do you mean real quick?
Yeah.
Like, you want me to realign your vocals in the last chorus? That's not a real quick, and that's not a mixed note. And this happens to me a lot. Yeah. And now I'm writing back, hey, can you have the producer do that and send it to me? Oh man, we haven't heard from the producer in 2 weeks. All right, I'll get it done, but this is not in my job description.
That's code for we haven't paid the producer yet.
That's exactly. So, these are things that I'm not actually, I tend to want to hold back from discussing on in this format, but it's actually kind of important because I don't think people are standing up for these things. Like there are blurred lines in what each of these job descriptions are, and I'm living them daily. And I think that's one of the benefits of us doing this podcast, like kind of also on same days as we're doing records, doing rooms, doing websites, designing, branding, all the things that we're all doing. It's like, this just happened to me yesterday. And I wrote back, nah. A simple nah. Like this isn't my job. This is not what you're asking me to do. I'm capable of doing it, but I know that the minute I do it, you're either one, going to want it back to how it was. Whether you think I improved it or not is irrelevant at that point. You're going to miss what it sounded like, or you guys do it, live with it for 2 days, and then send me that stem, and I'll be happy to place it in. I'm not getting a producer fee. I'm not getting 3 producer points on this record. I'm not invested as much in this record as you are. Therefore, this is not in that job description, and we need to be hard on it. I'm not tuning your vocal. I'll tune a word if we're late in the game. Like, I am capable of doing these things. I highly dislike it. They don't feel creative, and it's not what you're paying me for. So I'm trying to not let the lines blur, and letting managers, A&Rs, and other people on the team know that they can count on me to a certain degree to handle this amount of the process. And then disperse the others.
It's boundaries, yo.
Well,
Yeah.
it's back to the sprinter. You don't ask them to go and get coffee for you. It's like, you're fast. You should get our coffee. It's like, no, that's not. No, I'm in my lane doing my thing.
Yeah.
And I do it well because I don't do a bunch of other stuff.
Parameters. Yeah.
Because of the parameters.
Yeah.
And that's, I had it today, record I mastered 3 months ago, and the person's like, oh, finally getting around to releasing this, and just kind of realized the whatever needs to, the backing vocals need to be way louder in the second chorus. So can I just send you another mix and can you slot it in? And it's like,
Kinda.
it depends. So, sometimes I'll do pre-processing on the mix in RX if it needs a lot of de-essing, which is rarer for me now, but if it needs it, I'll do the de-essing first on the mix, then process. And that way if I need to do revisions, I can do them digitally. So, but if I did that on this one, then it isn't simple to recreate. I've got to go back and do all of that work on the new mix.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same time as mastering a record.
Yes.
And if it's analog, it's another, you're recalling and
constantly recalling vocals to slot out a new bar.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's a thing. It's fine. It's part of our job. I mean, like, let's also be real. Back in the day, when you only had analog gear and console recalls, the label would have to book a whole day for you to recall a mix, right? So now, one, that's a pain in the ass, but the mixer didn't do that. The mastering guy didn't do that. The assistant too did that. The assistant that was running the room did that, right? So there was a barrier of entry to even deeming if that snare up recall is even worth doing, right? So now we don't have that. So there needs to be another barrier and boundary set in the workflow per person. Obviously, some people are going to be, and I'm really flexible, so I don't want to gripe too much. Like, I'm down to tune someone's vocal if it needs to happen, but I want the dialogue to be, sure, I'll do this, but, and acknowledging that this is not what me and the alike are supposed to do, because I want this to affect Tyler Scott. I want this to affect Chris Tabron. I want this to affect all the homies that are out there working their ass off, mixing 20 songs a week or something, like trying to get shit done for people. It's not the best use of our time, though we can do it. And your re-de-essing of a mix is not the best use of their time. But I understand that if the second verse isn't right, there's obviously like a reason why you want to do certain moves. I'd argue the snare up note isn't always necessary.
No, and there's people will go,
oh shit, it hits harder. It already hit hard. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. But there's customers, whatever they ask, it's like, sure. Yeah. I don't even know what you need, but I'll do it. Yeah. And there's other people, that you're less inclined to do that for. And where people who you feel are pushing it a little.
There's different kinds of investment too.
Yeah, different relationships.
Yeah. You spend time with people and you might lean on those boundaries more because you want that relationship long term to blossom and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Has me thinking the other day about a change in an agreement, like something that we had written down in a contract, scope changed, got way bigger. I was like, well, scope change is going to cost more money. Here's the amount. Client said, well, I don't understand. Like, why is it so much more? And I said, that conversation right there could go many different ways, right? You could be super aggressive about it or whatever, but we hopped on the phone and I just walked them through step by step of what I would do to complete all of those tasks. And they were like, oh, okay.
Right. I mean,
and I think
communication.
The reason is that they had no idea that all of that stuff really went into what they were asking for. It just sounded like, a few new things.
It's hard to know all those things.
Yeah,
and it's
not their
other ones,
and it's not their job.
It's not their job,
but it's also it's our job to assess, and their job to trust us in asserting that and giving us what we need in order to get the job right. Because we're all on the same team. We all want the same.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there are people that are going to take advantage of that notion, and but there's always going to be someone trying to take advantage of everything, right?
Yeah.
We can only uphold our moral values and,
Yeah, but I mean,
boundaries.
It's not their job to know. It is part of our job to, as part of a team and one of the people in the process, to explain what the effect of their decision on your process is,
or what they're actually asking for.
Yeah, and to recontextualize it to your context instead of theirs. And their context are like change thing, and your context is like change X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Procedure.
And they're like, oh, it's like 15 different things.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Like, didn't realize actually we didn't really need that snare. It was just an idea.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, cool.
Now the devil's advocate is the gripey engineer that's like, well, I got to do this and that to do that and make that happen, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, that's a little bit grumpy old man status
That's
too.
somebody who said yes to things they shouldn't have.
Fair.
Angry with themselves.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I have when I was doing live sound, probably 20 or 21, I was working in a venue in my hometown, and I asked one of the house guys, we're short a power strip. I was like, could I get a power strip? And he was like, he spent 15 minutes telling me why he didn't have time to get me a power strip.
I've met that guy on stage many times.
And how, people ask him to do stuff and it's not really his job, and the power strips are in the other building, and they don't buy him enough power strips anyway, and the boss isn't cool. And I was like, this is fucking misery, just grim,
Feel bad for your wife.
It's like, dude, you're holding the power strip. Can you just give it to me?
Yeah, it was.
No, I know. I wanted to at least point a finger in that direction, that there is that person. And
But if you're resisting because of laziness or because you made bad decisions in your life or in the project, that's one thing. But if it's genuine, like, hey, you're asking a lot of me, and you're also not giving the compensation or the benefit of maybe it's a great song that you want to work on, or a benefit of the relationship, then it's like, well, here's the steps. So what's the trade-off here?
Yeah, and if it's a new client, you wanna help educate them moving forward in the process. So by song 5, it's even more streamlined from song 1. So
I mean, after the conversation I had the other day, the client was like, "Oh, I had no idea. This is super helpful because next time they're like, hey, could I get this kind of design?" They know already it's going to take time and it's going to be these steps. And now we could have the conversation about the steps instead of why is it not done, or how much is it, or why does it cost this much? It's, oh, I see what I'm paying you for.
Which is why prioritization is such an important part of your process. It's like, great, we collect all these ideas. Now here's our method for prioritizing them.
For sure.
And then when you're talking about adding new ones in, okay, now you need a new prioritization exercise.
Yes.
It's like,
And obviously every discipline's going to have different conversations with different tone and different words, but I think that's ultimately what needs to happen, and that's the communication piece, is like, what are we trading off here? Am I trading my time for nothing, for no money, no good relationship, and a bad song? Well, I'm probably going to be pissed. I won't get you.
Or do I have a client in a bind and like, I can take 20 minutes here.
Right.
My assistant and I can get them out of a bind.
Yeah.
If
exactly.
it's a vocal investment. That needs to be,
for sure.
I think a part that I'm hearing underlying all of these examples is the fear of communicating that need, right? And young engineers specifically, and older engineers too, that maybe been stepped on throughout their career and they're a little grumpier and
or passive.
More passive, sure.
Yeah.
And feeling like the minute you ask for something more, and it might not even be more money, let's just take finance off the table here, just
more time.
I need more exactly. I need more time. And normally when you ask for that, you're going to be met with, that sounds good. We need it by, whenever. And it's that fear that of communication and that conflict that could occur, and that you've already wrote it in your head that, oh, this is what they're going to say to me when I do this, and when I say this, and like, it's normally not the case.
No,
I mean,
no.
I
was talking to a buddy the other day. We both run design agencies, and we were talking about the money conversation, talking to clients about price and understanding their budget and all of that. And I was like, like immediately when I hop on the phone, I'm like, what products are you selling, or what services are you selling? What do you charge for them? How much did you sell this month, this year? Okay, so you made this million or this 100,000 or whatever. Yeah, great. Now I know. This is what I'm dealing with here. And like, you get that conversation out of the way. Whereas he was like, I don't really talk to them about that. And he was very hesitant to have the conversation. And I remember initially being hesitant to have the money conversation. It's like, am I asking them too much? Is this, whatever. And then you have it and it's like, oh, it's really nothing. It's like, this is just part of the whole thing.
Well, it's either they're not going to work with you because they can't afford you, or you're going to come to some agreement.
Right.
Or they're going to say yes. It's just, there's 3 routes.
Yeah. Or they're going to say yes
none
and
of them
can't
are,
afford you.
Yes and no, or almost.
And none of them are bad.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
None of them are bad.
None of them are bad.
But that brings me to something that I on our website call this morning, I jumped on and started venting to you guys about today. Because I got asked by a major record label if they could, on a 4-song deal do $250 less.
Per song or total?
Per song.
Right.
Per song. Less per song. And which comes to $1,000 difference from a major record label. And I was a bit more enthusiastic about this conversation earlier, and you told me, Rory said, "Stay mad."
Yeah.
So if we want to capture this later, I'm not mad about it, but
Bring it to the stage.
But Nathaniel, my manager, calls me and tells me this, and I just start laughing. I'm like, no. They're gonna get that, and it's not because I need that $1,000. It's a principle of the fact that. Why are you not valuing me where I value myself? I'd much rather you come back and ask for $5,000 off the deal because you just don't have it in the budget. Like, that's a bit more believable. Maybe you spent it on a music video.
$1,000, they're just chiseling.
They're just chiseling, and it just blows my mind. Like, yeah, if you explain the context of where it went, and it's you need a substantial amount off, and you're willing to offer me an extra point, or negotiate. Don't just chisel, because you're hoping that I am like the engineers that we're discussing that are like, sure, I'll just do it because they might not come back to me on the next gig then because of this. It's like, no, they're more.
It's a big look.
They're going to come back to you because of it, because they're putting you in this tier of no fucks. And you're going to deliver every time, and they're going to pay you what you deserve, because you value yourself, and you're elevating yourself to that position of respect. And I have to. It's only worked for me. And Nathaniel and I are not dicks about this, right? We don't come off that hard about it. It's just a very specific tone of no. Just this is what we need. We have a team here. We have this to do. That's not as easy of a task as you think it is. Like, whatever we're talking about, there's a very basic level of proper, polite, professional communication that seems to make these discussions go smoothly.
Yeah.
And this one today is a returning client, and they keep returning. And there's no sign that they're not going to because of this. So why? It's just a big why. Why are they doing it, and why would I say yes? And until you learn to push back on it, and then most likely will get what you're asking for. Again, this is on a very simple, small increment of money. I think that if someone comes at you and says, hey, this is what we got, it's a lot less. Like, maybe there's more room for flexibility. Now you're investing in the project at the early time.
Now we're in the pro bono category of your practice or whatever. You've got a place for that.
It just feels, man, the chisel on us because they're used to the narrative of us being passive engineers in the room. And I am a pretty passive person. So they caught me. They caught me a lot of times. They're just not going to catch me again.
Yeah.
Rise up.
Managers. I mean, Mike, mixers rise up.
Mixers rise up.
Michael shared an excerpt from this. What was that book? The E-Myth?
E-Myth, yeah.
The E-Myth.
I'm almost done. Oh
with
my
the
God,
worst
that book
cover.
is so
Worst
good.
cover ever.
The best book with the worst cover.
And I found out today it's blue on the cover. They chose like IBM blue, and I was like, you can't have made this design even worse later in the book by explaining that. I was just like, why?
Gross.
It's seriously, it makes the book sound terrible. It's the greatest thing I've read.
Michael, I'm sorry I triggered you.
Yeah,
but
I'm shook right now. I'm sorry.
I bring it up because this section on discretion slots in right here, because you're talking about, here's a moment where somebody is asking you a question and you can use your discretion to say yes or no, right? And so the argument the book is making is that discretion is the enemy of order for your client, right? So this is for large organizations, right? Where you have, so let's say all the salespeople have discretion in pricing. Now the clients don't know what to expect, right? And there's all these examples of how discretion in an organization creates chaos for customers. The flip side is policy and procedure and systems do create order for the customer and for the practitioner, in this case, the mix engineer. So, through the development of a mix business, you develop this sort of protocol in these situations. Well, if it's such and such client, like Nathaniel can probably answer back to some clients in that
Yes.
case without coming to you. In some cases, he will, right? In some cases, he might not know, in which case he does, right?
Yeah.
There's a sort of procedure in place. So what you're trying to do is automate as much of the thinking as possible without missing opportunities where discretion is actually an advantage. But, you know, at an organizational level, and it depends on how, I guess, big the mixed business or mastering business gets, the less discretion is like sort of healthy in that system.
And ultimately, you're kind of saving them for the next time, because the next time they know your rate. And that's that.
They know what to expect.
They know exactly what to expect.
That's a big moment.
To make
Simpler for them.
To make the call, though, you have to be prepared to lose the gig.
Sure.
Like you were saying, the likelihood in this case is small, but I mean, I have held my rate, which isn't stratospheric, but I've held it this year particularly, except for a couple of people who came friends and people I've worked with for years who are like, we're really hurting and we just want to get this record out, you know, whatever, cool. But generally I've held my rate and lost gigs for it, you know, and it's
For
like,
now.
now. But, you know, you have to be prepared to do that. And there's weeks when that doesn't feel so good, when the numbers aren't awesome anyway, and you're like, I don't want to.
And look, it's to be balanced.
But you have to do it.
Well, it bummed me out the other day that I got hit up on Instagram from a producer friend who was like, man, we tried to get you to mix so-and-so's record, but the A&R said that they couldn't afford you. I was like, oh, wait, but they didn't even reach out. They didn't even check in. And then I told Nathaniel that. He's like, well, that's good. We want that. We want people to come to you that are trying to, that understand your worth. And I took it as a negative. Like, wait, I missed out on the opportunity to mix someone that I really like this artist, and I probably would have, but he's protecting me from having to do that and having to feel like I should devalue myself for this. And I love that. I love that flip of perspective and that reframing of where it came from. And you might lose a couple of songs, a couple of gigs here and there, but your average income is going to stay the same because your rate is maintained for the gigs that you do get. So you'll probably notice at the end of the year that you're not losing much money because of the gigs that you quote unquote lost.
It's the only way to
get.
do it.
And also reframing that language of losing the gig versus not getting the gig.
Right.
It's like there's no loss.
Right.
Yeah. You never had it.
I was just having this conversation. I had like a 3-hour phone call with my buddy Andrew from college. It was a really excellent phone call. And part of that was about the cost of taking clients for less. And I was like, and I asked him, I was like, but do you understand the cost of taking? Like, it's not just taking a client because you're excited about them. There's a cost on your end to that, whether it's financial, whether it's time, whether it's both, whether it's even whatever you're making for them is not even that exciting, you know, but you were just hungry in that moment. And also, let's say I was just like, for example, let's say it took a full week, 8-hour days, 5 days, right? That project took your whole week. And now as a result, you couldn't have started a new one on Wednesday that you actually would have liked, that would have been a better rate.
Yeah, the opportunity cost.
The opportunity was gone, and luck is part of that, is opportunity, right? So it's like the cost of taking the gig is actually missing out on opportunity, missing out on money, missing out and potentially taking a client that's going to want to take advantage of you in the future, building bad habits,
receiving news in a bad mindset.
Outside of the gig. Yeah. So
impossible to quantify.
Right. I know. And I was just trying to quantify as much of it as I can, because there's definitely a cost to it. Just the mood you're in when you're like, I took this, I didn't want to, but I had to. That mindset going into any project, like it just can't be good.
Yeah, no.
You know, for anyone. So, relevant.
Yeah, discretion.
Email.
I like that. It's back to the what we had a couple of weeks ago. The discipline is freedom thing. You know, discretion sounds like it's freedom and it's flexibility and it's power.
Yeah.
And it sort of circles back around and bites you in the ass. Because it just eats. There's an overhead to processing it, and there's a cost to the way people perceive you, and the sort of the lack of boundaries. So it's,
if you think about discretion, it necessarily takes you out of sync with other people. Because if there's procedure, if Michael and I are following a procedure, then I know where I am in a project and I can see where he is in a project, and I know what's coming next. But if it's up to his discretion on the next step, I have no fucking clue. So now we have to talk.
And that takes
And now
time.
we have an overhead and time and all that. Yeah, and it
Or-
costs the company
or
money.
a potential disagreement on which
Yeah,
order to do things.
or whatever,
Right.
or
So
missed expectations, or there's any
All-
number of
all
So many
of-
variables.
It's
Yeah.
all chaos, though.
To
right?
loop
It's
back
all
up-
chaos.
Loop back to our conversation this morning. It was a good hour we were on. We were on Google Meet to get this copy done, but all the work was done, 3-4 months ago on all those 4 or 5 hour Google Meets where we were figuring out who we are, what we're about, how your project, you and Michael and John, was meeting Spider and my project in its infancy, and what we had in common, what we did and what we jettisoned, what we sort of found together, new directions, language, whatever, and that sort of mission statement, and all of that stuff just kind of flowed today, as well as the fact that we've done 6 or 7 episodes.
Just about to say that.
8,
that
yo.
This is 8,
right?
yeah.
Good.
So
I just posted a story that said 8 and I wasn't sure.
when we were doing our mission statement and stuff, we had an idea of what it would be, and now we've got a sense of the actuality.
It reminds me of this quote that a design professor said, "To see is to know," and it always stuck with me. Like anytime people were like, "Oh, should I like maybe do this or like add this thing or like do that?" He's like, "Just do it, print it, look at it, to see it, and then you'll know." And like I think
No resistance.
it kind of speaks to
It's mixing.
it speaks to we were speaking a lot about what we were and what this would be and how this would be, and then it got to a point where it was like we diverged and problem found, which is this phrase that I discovered recently, which I love. Kind of found all the problems, but then it was like just so vast, and then we got on the mic, solved some of the problems, like what mics and stands to get and whatever, what time, those sort of things. And then we started rolling, and now to update the website and the copy was so much quicker because we had sort of solved a lot of the problems that we had found back then.
Right.
And I think that was what we weren't able to do. Like I'd set up the basic structure of the site and knew like this needs to sit. We don't have the information we
need to get
fill it.
recording. That
Yeah.
became the priority. Just start recording.
And then it just showed, I mean, it's a great example of the benefit of doing. There's obviously disadvantages to doing sometimes
it
if you
can
go
be
too
embarrassing.
quick. Yeah, it can be embarrassing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think we had a good balance of sort of this divergence, convergence.
Yeah, I
problem
mean,
finding,
every time we
problem
record a
solving.
podcast, it's an opportunity to iterate.
Yeah.
You get the feedback.
Yeah, like I had caffeine this time. The last 3 I did not.
Really?
Hey,
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
I've been off it
That's
for
why I'm
a
lit
month.
tonight.
a whole month.
Yeah, I've had no coffee for
Dude,
a
I would have
month.
made you one. What are you talking about? I got some sick espresso right now.
Dude, I have geisha.
I was hoping
I have
you
a
guys-
geisha at my
have 3.
crib and I haven't had any.
3 geishas in one apartment. Jesus.
Dude, I've been wanting to make everybody espresso.
Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah,
Actually, I can tomorrow, but midday tomorrow.
I can do that. Any day. No, I love it. I have so much. I even bought another bag of April espresso beans today from Kumquat in Highland Park. It's like I keep loading up. I have so many coffee beans. I can't even have it all by myself. I need to share.
What do you think about coffee going off? Coffee beans.
Like rancid? The
No,
beans?
not rancid, but like the sort of, coffee that's been roasted, it's better the next day, and then like a week, a month. Do you feel it gets significantly worse?
Once the bag is open, I try to use it within a week.
Yeah.
I think from roast date, the coffee we're used to drinking at local coffee shops is 6 months since roast date.
Yeah.
The ones that I'm buying right now are weeks to month from roast date. It's what I'm sourcing. Like I'm actually looking into this because it's a totally different tasting coffee bean. Yeah. It's a bit closer to the green taste. It's more fruit forward, acidic. It's doesn't have that earthy kind of caramel taste to it.
Yeah.
It's way more.
What does Hasidic taste like?
Wait, what?
You said the coffee bean tastes Hasidic?
I missed that.
Acidic.
Acidic, not Hasidic.
Acidic.
I see.
So it's a different thing, but I mean, light roasted beans and that flavor will last quite a bit. It's when you're getting into more dark roasted Indonesian beans, and like I'm not an expert at this at all, but
no, that was my experience too when I was big on espresso.
But if I'm opening a bag, I want to use it for my friends and I within a week, 2 weeks max. It's kind of like
I always
it doesn't.
used mine in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not the same by the end. But with that's why I wanted to share the espresso with you guys,
Let's
kind
go.
of because it's just it's tasting so good right now. And I pulled 3 shots from the same bat today for myself. If you can't tell,
it's a living thing.
That's why you were so mad this morning about the labels. You were fucking jacked up.
No, I wasn't even mad. Like I was so like I couldn't. But it makes me laugh. The reason I even brought it up is it's more laughable at the fact that like, why are you trying to nickel and dime us? We're working really hard out here. You know, designers are working really hard. Like I'm in a relationship with one and my best friend's another, and like y'all are working. Why are we trying to negotiate prices? It's something I'm not angry about. It's something
You're hyped.
I'm hyped about.
It's from New York, man.
I didn't know how to talk about this stuff, and now I feel like I have a sense of confidence through my manager and him with his reframing to be able to at least, I don't even have to have the conversations per se, but I'm less flexible when he is representing me. And when I do have the conversations, it's just, I'm not afraid of losing the gig. I'm just not. And that's what you brought up. It's not even that I have all the gigs I want. It's just, it's a sense of self-worth, man.
And you can't go through your work life with that fear of like that people pleasing, like,
I did it for too long.
Yeah.
And thinking about the pricing, it's like losing the gig will likely happen if it's the wrong client who doesn't have the actual budget to do it. But like, that's obviously not the case. You've worked with major labels; they do have the budget to do it. So it's not one of those things where it's like you're giving this extraordinary price, and they're like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that." Yeah. So,
but it's like the example I gave you guys this morning was I just had a chandelier installed in the studio, right? And the contractor comes in. And, he gave me a range of a price it was going to be before he came. So I knew what to expect. And then when he came to tell me the exact price, I was like, cool, let me write the check. I'm not going to ask him to go $50 less on the install. Like, that's not the way to get people to do their best work in the future. I want to call upon him again to come install maybe another lamp or do another piece of work. Like, why? You don't want to negotiate with your plumber. You want him to do your plumbing properly so you don't have a leak in your faucet. Do you want the mix to sound right, or do you not care about the bridge? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I bet you there are lots of engineers in town that don't even have a rate. They just get what they can get.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about their lives as a system.
I know that because I ask people, often you'll ask clients, what do you charge a mix? Like for an indie mix, what's your number for an indie mix?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no number,
It's like, my question is, you don't know what your time is worth? It's like, it's a very easy way to come at a rate is to look at 50 productive hours in a week, look at the last 12 months of your income and just divide it by the number of those hours. And that's your hourly, that's your hourly value, and you start there,
That's a starting place, but that's not factoring in the years before, right?
It's not. It's what you're making recently and the trajectory of what you're making.
Yeah, that's why
there's tons of different pricing models. I looked into this when I was starting up the business. Like, there's so many different ways you can go hourly based on like just how much you want to make or market rate.
You have to go hourly to understand your hourly value.
Yeah, that's different.
But the best way I saw it broken down was it was taking a variety of these numbers and then looking at the mean and the average and like top and bottom. But one of those factors was what's market rate and what's the range in the market, what's the range in your hourly that you'd be willing to go.
Yeah, that's competitive pricing.
Yeah,
right?
Just really trying to figure out the scope of it. I don't think I wished it was just one number. It would have made my life way easier starting out, but it can take in some.
Which is what I'm saying. It's like you can just there's only so many hours in the week you can do good work, your best work, say, right? Which say 10 hours a day max.
Yeah, right.
Doing your best work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just the simple way at getting at a number that's better than none.
Yeah.
And then obviously, of course, competitive,
That would probably raise it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, no. I mean, I made what, $750 a day in my studio in the 90s, mastering from DAT with Waves plugins.
You really are in your 40s, aren't you?
I would make $350 a day with a band in.
Mm-hmm.
There are people charging $350 a day to have bands in now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know
All
what I
over
mean?
town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely an art. Pricing is an art. There's no.
Yeah, it's part of the
right answer.
marketing. It's part of the whole thing.
It's what
I'd like to deep dive it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, for example, like Michael sent his new website around for feedback and thoughts and just getting eyes on it. And when it got to the price region, it's on the site, right? So you can book on the site. And though the numbers seem large, there's no question that he is worth that value, right? And I found that interesting because I had a resistance to it. I was like, well, why are prices on the website? Was my first thought. It's like, but that's going to solve the problem we're talking about.
Which prices are you referring to? Just so because I made an update the other day where on the
then I don't want to say because I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
So, it was within the last week.
I made it yesterday.
Okay, so I don't know.
But there's still numbers.
Are they higher or lower?
I don't know which ones you saw.
There's like a 9,500.
But the numbers don't matter. What's interesting is that
Yeah,
your
yeah.
intuition was that ooh numbers, these are big, but you recognize the value of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the filter.
It's going to squelch all of what we're talking about
Yeah,
because no one's going to book him online unless they can click book pay, right? When I buy a bottle of wine online, I'm not like, hey, can you do $285 instead of $300? It's like that doesn't. There's no place for me to offer that. I don't even know who's selling the bottle of wine personally. I don't know their name.
Yeah.
We already know his name.
Yeah.
So I thought that, okay, granted, it's like the opposite extreme of this is Sam Harris's Waking Up app. You know, you can send an email to them at the Waking Up app email and say, hey, I cannot afford a subscription to your platform, and they will give it to you for free. All you have to do is do the work. They're not even going to ask any questions why. That's an extreme. That's generosity at its finest. Then the other extreme is this is what I cost. There's no wiggle room at all. I value my time so much. I think the audio engineer comes in somewhere on that spectrum. And using discretion, you choose where you are on that. Mix with systems, your hourly, what it costs for you to survive in the city that you're in the building that you're in that city. There's all these factors to factor in. The years of practice to date, whether or not you choose a certain project that's paying you well to upgrade a piece of gear in your studio. There's, are you paying a lawyer? Do you have a manager? All these
How
systems.
full the calendar is.
Yeah, how full the I love you said that at one of the conversation nights. Fill the calendar. You're doing it now, right? You're through your Square app. For the Unfuck, you're allowing people to book scheduled time that you allot for the week that are bookable hours, right? So assign bookable hours and fill that up with what makes you what you need to make, right? There's just somewhere in that spectrum of overly generous to no wiggle room. Find your place in there. But like Michael said about these exercises that people do on pricing, and there's an art to it. Be competitive, man. There's got to be a degree of lowballing that needs to get out the window. So conversations like this don't even need to occur anymore. There should be a value to what we do in our fields, and maybe a price we don't go below to a degree. And that's something that I don't really know how to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be prescriptive about that. I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, me either.
But when I hear that a label is paying, $250 for a mix from someone that like is, I also know charges $3,000 for a mix. You're like, wait, what? That just do it for free. What's the $250 you paying your assistant that? Like, what can we need a little bit more of the story is all I would say there.
Yeah.
One of the updates I made to the site yesterday was on the booking page, it says like projects, like like all projects start at least, and then there's a number there. I forget what it is, but it was like taking what the lowest possible offering that I would give, not the lowest rate I would give, but the lowest possible offering I could provide that I would be happy with. That's where it starts. So like expect that it's that or above. And so,
right,
whatever you were thinking,
and that sets expectations.
So,
which is good.
I just wanted to put a gate up that I want to speak with people. I want to see what the market says and all of that. I'd love that. I'm not even charging for the first call, but I might change that in the future. Been going back and forth with it, but I want that to be the gate. Is like, do you have that money to spend? Are you comfortable with that amount? If you aren't, or not even remotely close, and there's no reason of chatting.
It's making me realize that Michael is actually in a different kind of pricing challenge. It's pricing for like a new business, for like a thing that like Michael's done this a long time, but there are aspects of this that are different, right? So Michael's has his own agency set up, and so your relationship to your work and money has changed now. So now it's like we're establishing pricing in the marketplace. Whereas if somebody who's been mixing for 5 years, they have a history of work to look at. And that's where the formula of what you've done in the last 12 months, your full-time mix engineer, this is what you've earned. You had an average of 85% booking every for a week, then you can sort of arrive at a number. The thing that you're doing to establish pricing, that's
interesting, because I did look at the projects that I've taken, which initially have been different prices that I was like, roughly, my hourly rate times and and I was like, okay, well, I was able to charge this max, that min, here's the mean, here's the average. So that's basically where I came to this new pricing. And honestly, it was like, what can I charge where I'll be happy with it? I'm not going to go in feeling like I'm getting ripped off. I'm ripping myself off ultimately by doing it. And then a lot of it was just to get rid of the anxiety of pricing every time when someone's like, hey, how much does it cost? And
the discretion again.
I got to sit. And
so you do the hard work
drilled
once.
it in.
Do it all once.
So now I have it as a
policy,
as a response, like an Instagram response. So that I could just tap it and it'll just send all the shit. Like here's all the rates.
Yeah.
Worked great the other day.
So that one of the questions that we got a lot from engineers at the Conversations Live events was how, just staying on this rate conversation a little bit longer, we should probably either move on at some point soon. But one of the questions was, how do you grow or raise your rate with existing clients? I think this is kind of what you're kind of drilling down at is, and that's a tough one, because some of your clients aren't necessarily growing as fast as you are, right? So you have a homie rate, and that homie rate also has to go up as well as your main rate is, whatever you call that, major label rate. I have a rate. I don't have like an independent artist rate. I got rid of that with my manager, and I have a rate, and then I'm negotiable for independent artists, depending on where they're coming from, and I don't need to disclose too much about that necessarily, but
people are like, all right, how can I get a cheap mix?
There's no cheap mix.
The label's hurting you up. Hey, I'm an indie artist.
We've talked about this before. There's 2 pro bono projects per year, and the rest are mostly full rate. I'm down to do pro bono, but those have been done for the year. So as you all hear this, it's already canceled. We'll get back to you next year.
Enter the lottery.
John's inbox blows up on January 1st.
But
me.
Happy New Year, but also I have a new record.
But it comes, hey guys, hope you're well.
In these crazy times.
Hey, JOHN Costello. I saw you on Instagram. I get that all the time. Costello. I'm
Costello,
like,
and oh man, and John with an H when
Yeah.
it's in my, it's right there above. It's like, anyway.
Just copy his handle, paste it in. I'd rather it say mixed by John Castelli.
Yes.
Hi, mixed by John Castelli.
Cry me a river here, guys. You should see what they do to mine.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ. Vowels in a blender.
But I don't even know how.
I mean, I was spelling Candace's name wrong for quite.
I don't even know how to even talk about the question that I'm presenting. But what I really want to ask here is, how come, because I'm a little uncomfortable talking about this as much as I am uncomfortable setting my own rates, how come no channel of audio discussions are talking about rates and the importance of being happy with where your rate is at? Like, we're talking about this and I'm even like, I've never heard anybody talk about this.
There is one
the art form of it.
There is one podcast who discusses it, but the conversations are very safe. And I think it is scary stuff to talk about, and it is you don't want to sort of show your hand in negotiation or whatever, but I think it's really important for people.
But the negotiation factor, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Why does there have to be one?
There shouldn't be. No, we're arguing against negotiation. We're arguing against doing the hard work of understanding your value and where you sit in the world once. Of course, you've got to reevaluate. And
be flexible if you're doing bulk rates, and if there's more reason to hook up.
This brings me to something that I wanted to tag on your point, which is if you can't take less for the occasional record, or if you can't afford to lose a gig, you've got bigger problems.
Yes.
You're one flu away from losing your business, or one minor car crash or COVID or whatever the fuck, or relative dying, on the other side of the country, whatever.
Yes, right.
If you can't absorb that, you've got bigger problems than worrying about your rate. Yeah. So it's like the rate needs to be, some projects go quicker, some take longer. Some, I don't charge for revisions. Most projects, you don't have revisions. Some, you have one. And occasionally you'll have one with 3 or 4. Yeah. And the rate has to account for that.
Yes.
I don't want to start billing for revisions. It doesn't make any sense.
It's an all-in.
The tone is all wrong. It's all in. The line I say, I work until you're happy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Same.
And it's like,
and we have an all-in mix fee. That's what it's referred to.
The rate just encompasses that. And then someone knows exactly what it is they're signing up for. When they pay that, they're going to get a master that they like, And I've never had to do it, but if someone really didn't like it, like, oh shit, we're not going to use this, I'd be like, okay, well then I'm not going to charge. Like, I don't want that. I don't want someone, but it doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Luckily,
That's tricky. Why would you do that?
Why would you not charge?
Because I feel that my job is to conceptually, I think I want to show up with something that they're happy with. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
I don't.
It's an attitude or a disposition, but it doesn't occur. So I don't.
Yeah, no, I get
But
it.
I genuinely, if I got to the end of the rope, if the end of the line, 3 or 4 revisions in, and someone was like, "Man, I'm just not feeling this. It's not speaking to the way we hear the record. You're not hearing it the same way as me." It's like, peace, bro. I'm not going to make them pay for that. It wouldn't make any sense to me.
How could you justify that to your children? You spent that time for nothing.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Averaged over 1,000.
I'm just like the MP3 conversation.
No,
I'm like, wait, what? You believe this?
Averaged over thousands of records.
No, I got you.
It's meaningless.
I got
it's a nanosecond per day.
Yeah, I got you.
You know what I mean?
Oh, if you're at thousands of records, I guess I can see that.
Yeah. It's not. This isn't a weekly occurrence. It's never happened.
Yeah.
I've never.
I got you.
But as an attitude, it's like I don't want. To me, it's like a restaurant.
It's kind of a flex.
It's kind of a flex, but thinking about it as outside the mastering context, is like, what if there's these background mix shootouts occurring, and like, oh well, we're gonna now choose Tom Elmhurst mix over yours because it fits the vibe more. It's like, well, because you made that artistic choice, I respect that artistic
choice. They got 5 mixes and they're going to pay for one.
That's very different mechanics.
I need to push back on that because that's not.
That's not what I'm talking about.
You spend weeks on a song and they're not going to pay you your rate. It's like, no.
The fact is, you spent the time. You did the thing.
Yeah, I'd argue you should
they
get
paid for.
But
yeah.
Like, you can't get that time back.
I view it more like the chef
service.
The chef comes out and the food is on your plate and you haven't touched it. You've taken one bite out of the steak because it was stringy and overcooked.
Yeah, and they know that it's too hairy to like argue and wrestle over that money. They just get the people out of the restaurant. Like,
I wouldn't assume that's what they're doing every time. I think there's a
path of least resistance. It's like just fucking. We don't want this vibe in here.
That's not how I think of it. But to me, it's just a way of looking at it. Yeah. I don't want. I'm talking about someone who would genuinely. And I've gotten. There's a couple of projects where it's like you're 3 revisions in, and it's like this isn't clicking. We're not. I've said it to people like I don't think we're hearing this the same way. And it's like you get back on the phone and you say, okay, instead of iterating on this first master, let's scratch it. And now with what we know, let's just go again.
So you send a note to your landlord saying, I'm not paying rent for this day because.
No, again, I know. No, but it goes to my point. The rate has to reflect this. The rate has to account days when you're less productive. There are days when I can knock out more.
The rate has to account for all your policy.
And this work is done once. How you work and all of it. It all goes in the pot to give that number, and as your rent goes up and you get more kids and, LA just keeps fucking going, the rate's got to go up and you've got to do work commensurate with that rate.
Who's the guest on the podcast that we've listened to recently who wrote a handbook on how to deal with them? And it's like an exercise that they run people through.
I can't recall his name. This is months ago.
Like imagine writing a handbook that you would give to anyone who's going to work with you to understand how
instruction
to just
manual.
jump right
I'm
in.
getting to that point.
We kind of have that.
Yeah.
Kind of have a version of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the policy.
Designed by
handbook.
status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what our unfucked memos are.
Yeah.
The deal memo that we start with people, it says what to expect, what we do, what we do not do.
Yeah.
How we work. And it's just like in the first page, it's like, here are all the things you can expect from us. And here are things we definitely don't do. We're not turnkey. We don't cover this, and it's really helpful.
Yes.
People really respond well to it.
Yeah. People like direction.
Clarity and leadership.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be the expert at the table.
It seems so simple. Yeah, we're so afraid to assert in that manner a lot of the time.
I think that's part of that confidence to assert also comes from being around assertive people.
Yes.
That's part of the hierarchical, multi-generational structure that most engineers are coming up without.
Not just being around them, but seeing that it works.
Yes, but exactly.
Very important. Yeah.
I think that's the difference. And hopefully we could be an example.
Believing in it.
Something we
every Wednesday evening tune in on
Boundaries with
I wish it was
Michael,
live.
Rory, John, and Spider.
Talking about my perspective break this weekend and being reinvigorated to come back and jump on mixes, I kind of feel that way after every Wednesday night. Like we talk about these things, and I'm attempting, and I am not attempting. I'm applying them to my life as well. And I too struggle from about this rate issue, and I'm glad we touched on it tonight. I'm a bit hesitant to talk about these things because I don't really know my thoughts on them either, and I'm kind of working through them. So I'm glad we did, but really, I'm just inspired by being able to have this conversation and extend it out. As we keep recording these podcast episodes, these in progress of the conversation, I'm just anticipating y'all getting to hear it. So
and special guests coming soon.
Yeah.
So
nice
one with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. I enjoyed that.
Great.
Peace.
Good night.
Night.
I like Michael's soft good night. Just good night. Like an author.
Conversations is produced and mixed by Dylan Seals. The Conversations theme was performed and recorded by the Hazelrick Brothers.